Right now, wherever you are, you're probably feeling safe. Maybe you're lying in bed sitting on your couch, or maybe you're with people you trust. Your friends, your family. People you've known for years. Now I want you to think about something. What if I told you that the person sitting next to you in class, the friend you've known since middle school, the person who makes you laugh every day was planning to kill you? What if they were smiling at you while thinking about how they'd do it? That's not a horror movie plot. That's exactly what happened to Cassie Jo Stoddart. And before we go any further, I need to know something. Where are you watching this from? What city? What country? Because I want you to understand something important. This didn't happen in some distant place you've never heard of. This happened in a regular American town. To a regular girl, with regular friends, people just like you and me. Cassie was 16 years old. She had a boyfriend. She went to school every day. She trusted her classmates, and that trust killed her. Are you ready to hear how two boys she considered friends planned her murder like it was a school project? It was supposed to be a simple weekend in September 2006. Cassie Jo Stoddart was a bright, friendly 16-year-old junior at Pocatello High School in Idaho. She had her whole life ahead of her. College plans, dreams of the future. A loving boyfriend named Matt Beckham. She was the kind of girl everyone liked, someone you'd want as a friend. That Friday night, September 22nd, Cassie agreed to house sit for her aunt and uncle, Allison and Frank Contreras, who lived on Whispering Cliffs Drive in northeast Bannock County. They were going out of town for the weekend, and they needed someone to watch their dogs and take care of the house. Cassie said yes. It seemed like easy money, a quiet weekend alone. Nothing could go wrong. Or so she thought. Around 6 in the evening, Matt Beckham arrived at the house. They were planning a cozy night together, just the two of them, watching movies and relaxing. Everything felt normal. Everything felt safe. But then, around 7:30, two of their classmates showed up uninvited. Brian Draper and Torey Adamcik. Both were 16 years old, the same age as Cassie. They went to the same school. They sat in the same classrooms. They were supposed to be friends. Brian and Torey said they just wanted to hang out. Cassie, being the kind and welcoming person she was, let them in. She even gave them a tour of the house, showing them the basement, the living room, all the rooms. She trusted them completely. The four teenagers settled in to watch a movie. They chose Kill Bill, Volume 2. But halfway through the film, Brian and Torey said they were bored. They told Cassie and Matt they were going to leave and catch another movie at the theater instead. Cassie and Matt thought nothing of it. Their friends were leaving. They'd have the house to themselves again. But here's what Cassie didn't know. Here's what makes your skin crawl when you learn the truth. Before Brian and Torey left the house that night, Brian had quietly walked to the basement and unlocked the door. He made sure it would be easy to get back inside. Because they weren't going to the movies. They were coming back. And they were bringing knives. After leaving the Contreras house, Brian Draper and Torey Adamcik drove down the street and parked their car away from view. They got out and put on costumes. Dark clothing, gloves, white painted masks. They looked like something out of a horror movie. And that was exactly the point. These two boys had been planning something horrific for weeks. They had bought knives. 4 of them. One had a serrated blade. They had made videos detailing their plan. They wanted to become famous. They wanted to kill. And Cassie Jo Stoddart was their chosen victim. Brian and Torey crept back to the house through the unlocked basement door. They were inside while Cassie and Matt were upstairs watching television, completely unaware. The boys moved quietly through the basement, trying to think of ways to lure Cassie and Matt downstairs. They made loud noises, hoping the couple would come investigate. Nothing. Then they found the circuit breaker and turned off all the power in the house. The lights went out. Everything went dark. Surely now, Cassie and Matt would come downstairs to check the breaker. But they didn't. After waiting in the darkness, Brian and Torey turned some of the lights back on. But the damage was done. Upstairs, Cassie was starting to feel uneasy. Matt noticed something strange. One of the dogs kept staring down the basement stairs, barking and growling at something they couldn't see. The power had flickered. The house felt wrong. Cassie was getting scared. Matt could see it in her face. He called his mother and asked if he could stay the night with Cassie to help her feel safe. His mother said no, but she offered an alternative. She told Matt that Cassie could come home with him instead. She'd bring Cassie back in the morning. It was the perfect solution. If Cassie had accepted that offer, she'd be alive today. But Cassie felt a sense of responsibility. She had been hired to watch the house and the dogs. She couldn't just leave. So she declined the offer. She decided to stay. At 10:30 that night, Matt's mother picked him up. As Matt walked out the door, his mother heard Cassie's voice calling goodbye from inside the house. That was the last time anyone heard Cassie Jo Stoddart's voice. Matt tried to call Brian Adamcik's cell phone as they drove away, possibly to meet up with Brian and Torey later. When Brian answered, he was whispering. Matt could barely hear him. He assumed they were in the movie theater. But they weren't. They were in the basement. And they had just heard Matt leave. Now Cassie was alone. Now it was time. Brian and Torey waited in the darkness. They turned off the lights at the circuit breaker again, hoping Cassie would come downstairs. She didn't. So they made a decision. They were going upstairs. Brian had the dagger. Torey had the hunting knife. They climbed the stairs slowly. Then Brian opened a closet door at the top of the stairs and slammed it hard, trying to scare Cassie one last time. Cassie was lying on the couch in the living room. She heard the noise. She probably thought it was the house settling. Or maybe the dogs. Or maybe she felt that cold fear rising in her chest. And then they attacked her. Cassie Jo Stoddart was stabbed approximately 30 times. 12 of those wounds were fatal. She fought for her life, but there were 2 of them and they had knives. She was alone. She had no way to escape. No way to call for help. The boys left her bleeding on the floor and walked out of the house. They drove to Black Rock Canyon, where they partially burned and buried their costumes, their masks, and the murder weapons. They thought they'd gotten away with it. They thought they were smart, but they had made one critical mistake. They had filmed everything. They had recorded their plans, their motives, their excitement about what they were about to do. 2 days later, on September 24th, Cassie's aunt and uncle returned home from their trip. They found her body. The house was silent except for the dogs. Cassie was gone. The investigation began immediately. At first, police looked at Cassie's mother's boyfriend, whose fingerprints were found on the circuit breaker door in the basement. But he had done electrical work at the house a few months earlier. He was cleared. Then they looked at Matt Beckham. He was the last known person to see Cassie alive. But he passed a polygraph test. His mother confirmed his alibi. He was devastated, but he was innocent. Then investigators brought in Brian Draper and Torey Adamcik for questioning. The boys told police they had left the Contreras house and gone downtown to watch a movie called Pulse. But when detectives asked them to describe the movie, they couldn't remember any details. Nothing. That's when the lies started falling apart. They changed their story. They said they had been going through cars in the area instead. They hadn't been to the movies at all. The detectives pressed harder. And finally, Brian Draper confessed. But he tried to downplay his role. He blamed Torey. He said Torey was the one who told him to make sure she was dead. On September 27th, just 5 days after the murder, Brian Draper and Torey Adamcik were arrested and charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. During interrogations, each boy blamed the other. But the evidence was overwhelming. Brian led investigators to Black Rock Canyon, where they recovered the partially burned VHS tape. When police restored the footage, they saw everything. Brian and Torey had filmed themselves talking about their plan. They said they were inspired by the movie Scream. They wanted to become famous killers. They mentioned Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the shooters from the Columbine massacre. Brian had even written an essay about Columbine where he said, "I am becoming more and more obsessed with Columbine. They are my heroes. I will follow in their footsteps." The tapes showed 2 teenage boys excited about murder. They talked about how they were going to kill Cassie. They even made a list of other potential victims. They called it their death list. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't an accident. This was premeditated, calculated murder. They wanted to kill for fun, for fame, for the thrill of it. And Cassie Jo Stoddart, a kind-hearted girl who trusted them, became their victim. The trials began in 2007. Brian Draper was convicted on April 17th. Torey Adamcik was convicted on June 8th. Both were found guilty of first-degree murder. On August 31st, both boys received mandatory sentences of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. They also received an additional 30 years to life for conspiracy to commit murder. The community was devastated. Cassie's funeral on October 1st, 2006, was attended by 500 people. Her family started an initiative called Pumpkins for Cassie to honor her memory. Anyone who donated to the Pocatello Animal Shelter or the Idaho Food Bank received a pumpkin. It was a way to keep her spirit alive, to turn something horrific into something that helped others. Brian Draper and Torey Adamcik are now in their mid-30s. They're serving their sentences at Idaho State Correctional Institution. They've filed multiple appeals over the years, all of which have been denied. They will never be free. They will spend the rest of their lives in prison. And Cassie Jo Stoddart will never get to live hers. This case reminds us that evil doesn't always look like a stranger in a dark alley. Sometimes evil looks like your classmate, your friend, the person sitting next to you in math class. Brian and Torey were not outsiders. They were part of the community. They went to school dances. They hung out with friends. And they planned a murder just to see what it would feel like. Cassie Jo Stoddart's story is a tragedy that never should have happened. She trusted the wrong people. She stayed in a house when she should have left. But none of that was her fault. She was a victim of two boys who wanted to play out a fantasy from a horror movie. And she paid for it with her life. If you're watching this from wherever you are in the world, remember Cassie's name. Remember that she was a real person with a real life. And remember that the people around you might not always be who they seem to be. Stay safe, trust your instincts, and never ignore that feeling when something doesn't feel right.